like to introduce our guest who needs no introduction on this platform, but is going to get one anyway?
Okay, or we could just say, here's Helen. Nah, we got a really good writer for Helen. Let's see, what does it say? Helen comes from a diverse background and beliefs, raised Roman Catholic, I knew that, then rejecting the church to move into paganism. She was a pagan high priestess for 10 years during her time in that faith. 13 years, wow. Eventually, realizing through education and skeptical inquiry into herself, she came to the conclusion that she had no solid evidence for her beliefs, which brought her to a more humanistic and realistic, we believe, worldview. Still studying psychology, even out of college, she spends her time trying to understand human behavior. Good luck with that, Helen. The emotional and psychological understandings of ourselves and what forms our perspectives and why. Volunteering for RFR for 4 years, I remember training her. Her work includes being a team member, co-host of our weekly podcast, That's This, the RfRx show, also an ambassador and the fundraising team leader. She does a fantastic job at that too. She's also a queer person, an advocate of LGBTQIA plus rights. For Helen, she enjoys horror, especially cosmic horror, and sci-fi movies, video gaming, and diving deep into made-up world-building stories such as The Lord of the Rings and dreams of living in the Shire itself. You can read more about Helen's journey in the online article, Selling the Paranormal, A Peek Inside the Spirit University. I think I know the person who wrote that. It was me. We're putting the link in the chat, but you can Google it if you're listening to this. Selling the Paranormal, A Peek Inside the Spirit University, Rob Palmer and Helen Greene. Welcome, Helen.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Look, I get attention this week. I'm so excited.
Yay, because you're never on this show
Yay.
normally.
Oh yeah, I'm very shy and demure and do not like attention whatsoever.
I would have loved to
So-
have seen you being your Wiccan High Priestess doing a service. And do you have any recordings of that?
Oh, do I? I don't think so, but I
Oh,
still
damn.
have my like grimoire and like which is like your spell book, and I still have my binder of all the pagan shit that I used to do. So I could I should bring it to excursion and show it to everybody.
Oh, that would be a hoot.
It is.
Oh man.
It is it's a trip. Yo. Anyway, so thank you everybody for being here. I thought like I've been wanting to do a talk for a while, and I've been going through some stuff, and this this kind of just, after everything that's been going on in the world, this kind of just came to me as like the topic that I've always been very interested in, so I wanted to do a presentation on it. You get to listen to me babble for like an hour. So good for you, everybody.
And
So
then we get to have discussion about it, yeah, and
yes,
people can ask
yes.
questions.
But like, if
Mm.
you guys have questions or comments while I'm going through, like, please interrupt me. Like, I enjoy that. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So, my talk is called Finding Meaning in a Meaningless World, presented by myself, Helen Greene, or as I like to be known as, a potential trouble source. So, so what we're going to be talking about today, let's talk some philosophy, y'all. We're going to be talking about absurdism, nihilism, and existentialism. And for those of you that are listening to the audio only, I live in the world of memes. And so there's a SpongeBob meme where Squidward is looking out the window and he is nihilism. SpongeBob, and he's looking at SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob is existentialism, and Patrick is absurdism. So absurd. So we're going to go over. This is like a brief overview of what each of these terms actually means. Absurdism means over generally that there is no inherent meaning to life. Nihilism, everything is absolutely meaningless. Nothing has meaning. We're all just objects in space. And then existentialism is meaning is self-defined. That means that we get to choose our meaning and our perspectives on the world. Now, a lot when people are leaving religion and other beliefs that they have, even a paradigm, if you will, they will start to question these things, because especially in religion, you're taught that, the universe gives you meaning. I mean, God gives you meaning, or the universe does actually care about you. If you like, when I was pagan, I believed in woo-woo stuff, and that there was some kind of like cosmic consciousness that gave a shit about me. No, there's not. But for a lot of people, when they lose that belief, it can become terrifying. And we're going to talk about that, how we work through these different steps when we're looking at these philosophical viewpoints, and how do we deal with them. So that is the purpose of this talk. So moving on, we're going to talk about absurdism in a little more detail. What is the meaning of life? There is none. So it's a little, again, I live in the world of memes, plankton from SpongeBob, and there's a little bit of like little chatty daggle, my dog's tail to my dog. Catch me, catch me. My dog catches tail. What do I do with you? My dog's tail, and this is plankton. I don't know. I didn't think I'd get this far. So the pursuit is absurd. It makes no sense. So let's talk a little bit more about absurdism, which is accepting the tension between search and futility. Now, the core idea is the idea of this absurd, which arises from the human tendency to seek meaning in a world that offers none. Albert Camus' work, especially The Myth of Sisyphus, which is a great book. I read it. It's a really, really good, that describes this particular concept of this philosophy. Camus argues that the struggle itself can be a source of meaning, even if the purpose is unclear. So whatever you're doing, whatever struggle that you're going through, you're not going to come to some great clarity of meaning out of it. Like there's no outside purpose other than the inherent meaning that you give to it. It's absurd, which means that there is no inherent meaning. Like, you going to work every single day. Yes, it gives you a purpose, but to 99% of people in the world, it's meaningless to us. It only has the meaning that you are giving inherently to it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a meaning. It just has to be personal. So, and that the struggle for it, and the thing that you're always doing, and the thing that you're looking for that source of meaning you're going to have to discover that for yourself. Now, when you don't have a belief in a divine order anymore, the world can seem very chaotic and random. We're taught in religion that everything has a purpose. God has a plan. God works in mysterious ways. The universe, it's just aligning its energies for you. Mars has to be in the second house of Aquarius, blah, blah, blah. And then, there'll be some kind of like cosmic event that is supposed to bring something to you, or something was supposed to happen. When you're living in the absurd, you can take it one of two ways. One, there is no God, there is no cosmic order. Cool, that can seem terrifying. Or if you accept that the universe is absurd, and that condition can actually be liberating. You're free from looking for cosmic approval or a divine plan, or if the planets are aligned, or you walked under a ladder and now you have bad luck. Like all that kind of just goes away, and that can free you and also your headspace on to concentrate on more things that might actually be more important to you. So that's another reason to kind of think of this concept as well. Okay, what am I? Damn it. Sorry. I did not mean to do that. I screwed myself up. Okay. I lost my notes. I am such a professional right now.
Oh no, things are becoming absurd.
They're becoming absurd. Exactly.
It's
Okay.
chaos.
It's chaos. No. Okay. Now, another thing with the absurd is that we're going to talk about Camus, and this is where we're going to talk about we are bound by choice. So Camus had 3 observations about this, which is basically, hold on, did I? So we're going to talk about the three choices. The one is the thought of unaliving yourself. It can be literal or symbolic, which means that if you see yourself as just an object within the universe, an object in space, and things happen to you, you have put yourself at mercy to the universe and the whims of the absurdness of life. And for some people, and the idea is like, well, if it's absurd, why would, if I unalive myself, would it be, wrong or, a moral detriment or whatever? But the thing is, though, is that when you were talking about it, either from a philosophical side or actual thing that you're going to do, is that you have given up the idea that you have choice. And that you have, and this is very simplifying it. I'm not talking about like mental health here. I'm just talking this from a philosophical perspective. So don't at me. Okay. But basically is that you are giving up to the absurd, that because the world is absurd and it has no meaning, then you don't, and because of that, you can just, not make that decision to unalive yourself. And you can do this philosophically as well. Adopting another belief system to escape it. So like if you, you are, coming out of religion and you are going through this, the crisis of realizing the universe is absurd. And it's too terrifying. A lot of people will cling and jump to another religious path. I did it. I was Catholic and then I went to paganism because I probably wasn't thinking about this too much at the time. But I was like, there has to be something. There has to be, because why? And then I took psychology and philosophy classes. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, never mind. But that's okay. And then so the final thing you can do is revolt, which means that you're accepting life's absurdity without resignation. That means that you're like, okay, yep, everything is absurd. It doesn't make any sense. It's fine. So that is one of the ways that you can kind of accept that, the universe just doesn't, it's absurd, doesn't really care. But that can be liberating, and you can use that as a form of revolution for yourself in the way that you're thinking. Okay, moving on to nihilism. This, for those of you that watched Arrested Development, you're cool people. So I have a picture of Tobias when, my honest belief that nothing can be truly known or communicated. So, we have Tobias in his blue man face, and he says, "Hey, sorry for not texting you back. I'm just feeling a bit blue lately and can only think about food, void, chaos, and death." So, which would be nihilism, the rejection of an inherent meaning. So the core ideas with nihilism is philosophical nihilism, which is life is inherently meaningless, and traditional morals and values are constructed rather than absolute. This idea was popularized by Friedrich Nietzsche, and his explanation of the death of God. He viewed the absence of religious values as both a crisis and an opportunity for self-determined morality. Now, I am not a nihilist, but I know plenty of people that have left religion are, but I've heard it referred to as positive nihilism or absurd nihilism. So, and that's fine. I'm probably like a tiny bit nihilist, but not really. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So if you are a nihilist, I'm not poo-pooing on you. I get it. But basically is that not even the meaning that we give something doesn't have any real meaning. And I kind of agree with that. Things, if you are just an object in space, on this little blue dot going around, our sun, and you're not, and it doesn't really matter, then yeah, you could have a nihilistic view. It's not saying that anything is good or bad about it. It's just sort of like a neutral thing. Because again, nothing has any meaning. So, now, because of that, you can now self-determine your own morality. Now, we definitely have social moralities that we follow, laws and things that have benefits as a society, how we based on ethics and fairness and justice. And we're right now we're doing the best we can. Talk to me again in a year. But right now, things are, we try to do our best to bring a sense of justice and fairness to the world. And this is done through our ethics and through civic policies and things like this. And also just the way we're raised. We're taught not to be mean to people for the most part. We're even in framework of religion, Jesus said to turn the other cheek or whatever. We're taught not to be an asshole. So, and that's a good thing because it makes your life a lot easier. But if you're choosing your morality, it doesn't really have any sort of inherent meaning. Like you can, like technically you may not committing crimes, but you must really like cutting people off in traffic. That could be a thing that you do, and it's not kind. But you're deciding your morality for yourself, so you might find that perfectly acceptable for one of the things that you do. And nihilism says like, well, it doesn't really have any meaning, so it's fine. It's only that when you have that the social cost of the things that you do that hopefully you'll have a guilty conscience. Nihilism is where the scene place where Chidi freaks out in the classroom. Yes. So if you haven't now watched The Good Place, where Rob has his wonderful wallpaper, please do. It is a wonderful show, and it goes into a lot more of this in a more entertaining way.
So many
it's really
people I
good.
find watch the first few episodes and decide, oh, they know the story, it's boring, and they don't realize the big twist comes up for all the other
So good.
seasons.
It's so good.
So if you did that and started and stopped it, start it again. Do yourself a favor.
Yes, please. Yes, please watch the show. It is wonderful. So, looking from that perspective, if you're going to reject that the world has any inherent meaning, what kind of meaning are you going to give to your life? And one of these things is like, how do you face nihilism in like your everyday life? And facing a world without inherent meaning can be overwhelming, especially for those that have relied on meaning for the purpose of existing. And this doesn't have to be even like religious. It could be like a political attitude that you have. This could be a relationship. This could be, whatever sort of thing that is related to you as a person and your identity. And that when that thing goes away, does the meaning go away with it? And nihilists will say yes, because you only gave it so much meaning. Now that it's not part of your life anymore, it doesn't really matter. It only matters what you put into it, which I kind of agree with. But there is no meaning. Even the meaning you put into it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter. That is a very nihilistic sort of perspective. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. Now, we can distinguish this with active nihilism, embracing personal freedom to create values, versus passive nihilism, feeling despair or a loss of direction. So, okay, yeah, nothing has any fucking meaning, anybody. What are you gonna do about it? That's basically what you're saying. So, like, I'm going to make active choices to bring meaning into my existence, rather than feeling the despair, loss of direction, frustration that comes when the thing that was giving you meaning no longer does, or you're not giving it any sort of special purpose. So that is an overview of nihilism.
Well, and that's interesting, Helen, because this sounds exactly like what a lot of people have said to me when they say, oh, well, if you leave religion, then this must be what you believe. And they're basically describing this passive nihilism where you must just be deep in the depths of despair because nothing matters, because anything with meaning in your life is gone now. And this seems to be what many religious people may assume that we will default to. But I am really excited to hear that there are other options. I mean, I know there are other options because I am not a passive nihilist, but that just struck me that that is exactly what I hear a lot of times from, family members who are religious, and they assume that this must be where we have all landed, and I don't believe that it necessarily is.
So, could I ask you a question about this? So, a lot of people call into the ACA shows with this kind of a question, or this kind of an attitude. It's basically, oh, if I'm going to die and there's no afterlife, life has no meaning. And then often Matt, or previously, or one of the hosts now, will say something like, well, if you have a car, you're not going to have it forever. Is it useless the moment you get it? It has no meaning to you for the 10, 12 years you own it. Also, if you go watch a movie and, it's a 3-hour movie and you leave after an hour, would you just leave after an hour and not care about what happens to the rest? Does it have no meaning just because it has an end? So is that part of this discussion?
Yeah, this is the kind of the idea that what's present in our life right now, the things that we value, whether it be family, friends, a car, that you are giving that intrinsic meaning to your identity. But once it's not there anymore, it kind of loses me. And we can all think of, like when we're all in college, and when we were in college, like it was giving us life purpose, and we were going to get our degrees and be like really, really smart people and have careers. At the time, that was a core part of our identity, and we gave being in college a lot of meaning. Now, as full-grown adults, yeah, we're educated and we're smart people, but that initial meaning of I'm a college student, I am going to be this type of person is no longer as relevant as it was to us that are like, middle age, in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like, it changes, and that's okay because it's supposed to
Hey,
be.
speak for yourself. Some of us are perpetual students and can't ever
Okay,
seem to
well,
quit going to school.
that is true. I am also a
Some of us
perpetual
are
student, just
older
not
than
professional.
some of us are
I'm gonna
older
go
than the
through.
ages you stopped talking about at. So
I'm trying. You're a full grown adult. You're a big person. So that you pay bills, no property. So, but that's the kind of idea, because a lot of because when you're in religion, it says, like, your purpose is to worship God. That is your thing. That's the way you're supposed to do. Because Sky Daddy doesn't like it if you don't worship him, and God is going to tell you what your life meaning is. Through the Bible, your preacher, your priest, your fellow people in your congregation. They are telling you this is your meaning. And then those of us, like, people like that come to the shows, or contacts us here at RfR, they're dealing with that cognitive dissonance of, well, if you don't believe in God anymore, how can I have meaning? And
yeah,
it's hard because it's inherently nothing has any meaning, only the meaning that we give it. So that's why I always say it's subjective. It's a subjective experience.
substantial number of conversations on the helpline of people stepping out of religion have something to do with this question. I will say that. And often it's like, how could I, what am I supposed to do with my life now? God told me what to do up to this point. Now I don't know what to do. I said, did God really tell you what to do? And like, except for a tiny fraction of people who are schizophrenic, they weren't hearing voices telling them what to do. They were interpreting words in the Bible, or as you said, things their friends said, or whatever. You were still making up your own mind about what your meaning was. You were pointing the finger at God. And now you're not going to point the finger at God anymore. You can still make up the same meaning.
Exactly. So that is the thing about choice. Because even if, and this is the thing I've been trying to get around to religious people and believers, that a belief in God is a choice. Yes, you've been indoctrinated into it, but if you still actively go to church and you still want to follow this religion, you're not interested in looking at any other sort of belief systems or lack thereof, that is an act of choice. You are actively engaging in what is giving your life meaning, and you're choosing it to be a deity or your church. It is, even though you can be, indoctrinated into it, and but those of us that have left religion, we chose a different path. It is always, you are bound to choice, because even if you do nothing, you're still choosing to do nothing. It's a choice.
I agree with your take on it, and I often have internally objected to when I hear people on the ACA shows, I will say, saying you don't choose something, you don't make a choice, right? You don't choose to, and in regard, I think it's what you said. You don't choose it, but you choose what path to go down, right? That's an active choice.
Yeah.
I will look at this information, or I will never look at that information because it might change my mind. So that's a choice you're making. And then the information gets into your head, and then maybe you don't have a choice once that happens. But I think up front, you actually do have a choice about which path you take.
Totally agree with you,
Event.
Rob. Yeah, that has struck me as well. Like, yes, I'm not necessarily choosing to believe or not believe something. That if I don't believe it, I just simply don't believe it. But I have chosen what information to expose myself to,
Right, and
which
that could be
is what led
religious
to this condition.
or religious
Yeah,
or anything. I mean, there are flat Earth believers who will not look at the actual scientific evidence because they don't want to change their minds because they'll be thrown out of their social circle because all their friends now are flat earthers, and they'll kick them out and never talk to them again if they change their mind.
agree.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to talk about existentialism. So I had there is a picture again. I live in meme land, and it's the bear, and it says, after going through a prolonged and intense existential crisis, Bear was feeling a lot more confident about who he was, and his little sweatshirt on says, "I'm a goddamn bear." So it's adorable. Okay, so existentialism: existence precedes essence, or no one is born with a preordained purpose, and that is awesome. Okay. The reason why is, let me tell you, we're going to talk about how we kind of create purpose in a existential sort of framework. So an existentialist basically has the concept that no, I was not born with an essence. I was not preordained to be anything except I was born a baby. I wasn't even born an atheist because I didn't know what atheism is. So you can't be born an atheist if you don't know what it is, because you're a baby. So, that being said, since we have no preordained purpose, since we have no preordained, prepackaged thing that says who we are, we get to choose it. Now, so when we're talking about existential, we're talking about it is the individual's responsibility and freedom are center. Existentialist thinkers like John Paul Sartre and Soren Kierkegaard argue that existence precedes essence, meaning we are not born with predetermined purpose. So that these are the core ideas of existentialism, and that we're talking about choice, including that is individual responsibility and freedom. We are bound to choice, but that gives us freedom. Influence. So this can have, when we're talking about if we're talking about within a religious framework, religion gives you an external framework of meaning. Like we were talking about before. Believe in God. God's giving you meaning. He's going to tell you what to do. Blah blah. Again, when we're talking about choice and meaning, existentialism suggests meaning can be created individually rather than being assigned. So if someone's I'm going to use gender. If someone tells you you're a girl and you're like, wait a second, I'm not. They're trying to put that external factor onto you because it's their perspective and what gives their life meaning. But it doesn't give you meaning or your purpose or identity. You get to choose that. And when you're actively making these decisions, when you're aware that you are not an object in space, but you are an active agent in your life, and for lack of a better term, a force in the universe, not a very big force. And it's not going to last that long, but you are a force unto yourself and in your own life, which means that because you have that ability, then you have all the power for all the good things that you do and all the bad things that you do. And So for example, we're going to talk about like choosing a career, creating personal relationships, developing a value system, because again, now we're going to talk about values and like, yeah, we can choose our careers and, we can choose jobs and things that give us purpose and meaning in our lives. Create personal relationships. I always say like the things that give me meaning are my family and friends and the people that I love and care about, because that gives me an external purpose basically, but I make it internal. And the idea, but then we have to move on to, how do you frame your ethics? How do you choose your morality if you're no longer having religion tell you what it is? So, so no, don't listen to Ayn Rand. I'm responding to somebody in the chat. Not usually a good idea. If you want to, that gives you life meaning, fine. Not my personal recommendation to create a meaningful life. But if it gives you meaning, cool, it's your choice. I'm not going to take away your choice as long as you're not being a butthead. So anyway, so keep that in mind. So when you're going through these existential questions, when you're looking at the broader spectrum of like, okay, I was in this religion, it doesn't hold any truth for me anymore, then you can become the person that decides how you want to live your life and those active choices that you're going to bring to your life. So that is an overview of existentialism. Now I'm gonna these are things to ponder, everybody. What parts of your life do you feel most free to define? Are there areas where you'd like more freedom? And in what ways do you revolt against absurdity in your own life? What small routines or goals give you meaning? And my last question, when do you feel a void or of meaning in your life now? How do you typically respond to these feelings? So these are just things to ponder. You can answer in the chat, don't answer, think about it later. That's fine. These are just for things for you to think about. All right, and moving on. Okay, now. Okay, so I'm going to expand a little bit more on leaving journey through an existential, absurd, and nihilistic ideas. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So some of the, like I said before, and I explained this, I'm not going to do this again, but a religion offer provides a pre-patric sense of purpose, which I explained before. And transitioning away from religion can leave a feeling like a vacuum, where your old belief system kind of provided you the stability, understanding of your who you are in the world and your place in it. Now, as people leave religion, now you have to reconstruct your identity. You have to look at that and be like, okay, like who am I without this? And things and former religious people that were formerly religious may struggle with the questions of morality, mortality, and who you are within your community. That's why we here at Recovering from Religion provide community, because it's so important when you're going through this process, because where you had your religious community saying we are going to give you your meaning. That's one aspect of it. We are encouraging for you to choose your own meaning, whatever that looks like, and kind of help you, figure out, where that is on your terms. Now, and then another point about this is existential, absurdism, and nihilism offer tools for reconstructing personal meaning without reliance on religious beliefs. Now, since these are very atheistic sort of perspectives in philosophy, there is no like Kalam argument. There's no arguing for morality, an objective morality because God exists. There's none of that. It is completely up to the person how they want to use that framework to basically decide like what kind of how they're going to bring meaning into their life. And this can be exhilarating and terrifying at the exact same time. I would like comments. Make a comment. Cara, I want some feedback.
Oh, okay. A comment on how it's terrifying.
Like, so when you deconstructed, I'm gonna ask you,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
did you feel that? Did you feel both exhilarated and terrifying? Yes, it is like playing Bloodborne.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I had a little bit of a different kind of deconstruction experience than some people. So this may not be the same way that a lot of other people felt, but uh, because of, I think, the sort of oppressiveness of the religious system that I was involved in, the only reason I believed it because I had been told and indoctrinated to believe it was true, but I always hated it. So I simultaneously believed it, but despised it. So when I finally realized that it wasn't true, I was more than pleased to let that go. So I didn't have that kind of, oh no, what will I do now without this? I was just so happy to not have it anymore, and just not have to worry about how awful the universe was, because I no longer believed those stories that I had been told. So I did not have that experience per se, but I know that a lot of people did because they probably truly believed in the religion that they had and they found it comforting and beneficial in some way. I didn't. I didn't choose it. I was indoctrinated into it. But I would imagine that for someone who had chosen it or was actively continuing to choose it, that would be different. I don't know. Maybe Rob had a different experience.
No, not really. As Helen knows, I was Catholic and basically didn't believe a lot of the stuff except maybe for the Trinity was there. And then when
How
that
very pagan of you.
yeah, long story, but I've told it before, but all my cousins became a different form of Christianity and then I just realized, oh, it's all just made up. And I don't know why, but I did not go through the existential nihilistic crisis of meaning was given to me by God, because I don't know if I actually believed that in the first place. It probably wasn't something drummed into us as Catholics, at least not growing up in New York Catholic diocese.
So we've totally made Helen's slide seem irrelevant now, but I know
well,
I
I'm
hear
sure
this
there's plenty
story
of
from
people
people
in the
often.
audience, and then when this is uploaded to YouTube, that will relate
Yeah,
to that
Yes.
experience. I
absolutely. I
didn't
mean,
go through that personal
many of
experience
our
either.
callers to the helpline definitely can relate to all of this. Absolutely.
Like, I went through the death of a thousand cuts when it comes to letting go of belief, and I didn't go through an existential crisis. I was just kind of like, oh, I'm like, this is absurd. I have no
Yeah.
good reason to believe any of this, and I moved
Yeah.
on. So, anywho, but if you went through the existential crisis, though, please share in the chat if you feel like it. You don't have to, but if you feel like sharing, it would make me feel better. So my slide is that pointless.
For some of the people I've talked to, including in my family, I think it's the
No,
fear of going through that will
yeah,
stop them from looking at other information that they worry may pull them out of the religion, so they don't look at it because they don't want to go through this crisis.
right. Because
Yes.
what do religious structures say? Like, Scientology, don't go on the internet. Jehovah's Witnesses, don't go on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
And controlling information.
Oh my
Because if
God.
you control the information,
I had a
then you get
Jehovah's
to set the narrative.
I had a Jehovah's Witness caller on the helpline who had been out for over a year. I don't remember the exact length of time, but at least a year. And she had told me she just today, which is why she called us, finally looked at something on the internet that disparaged Jehovah's Witnesses. Because even though she left the church, she was still basically a believer. I don't remember the details of why she left or whatever, but she was afraid that if she looked, she would go to whatever, Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in hell, but she'd be wiped out at Armageddon. She still believed that part of it. And she took a year to freaking look at anything else on the internet because of the fear of that.
I
Well,
believe
and
it.
that really tracks with what we hear over and over again from people too, who say they no longer believe, but they're worried that they're going to go to hell or whatever the consequences for not believing in their belief system, because the emotion of it sticks with us even after our brains have decided, this
Mhm.
isn't true anymore. I don't believe this. But sometimes it's hard to get past that emotional reaction that we've been trained and indoctrinated over and over to have. So I could definitely see that kind of lining up with this too.
And that's the goal. The hopefully if I explain this it'll give people a different perspective on going through an existential crisis. So, because even if you're not religious, you're going to go through one. So, okay, now we're going to find meaning in the meaningless. Okay, so how do we do this?
So excuse me, hold on. I'm seeing your chart is like halfway off my screen. Is it just me, or is
I have to move it over. Hold on.
this the
There you
thing?
go. See,
Okay.
there you go. Aha, aha, aha.
I didn't see it move.
Okay, did it move?
Is it looking for you?
There it
There we
is.
go. There we go. Thank you.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I have like you guys can see just the slides, and I have a bunch of my notes and the chat up and the chats, so it's a little crowded on my monitor. So, okay, how are we going to find meaning in the meaningless? No, that is not what I wanted to do. All right, moving on. Okay. So, if we use existentialist thought, finding meaning through relationships, creativity, and curiosity, and we have to value embracing temporary, fleeting joys. As I like to say, so this shall end, whether it be something positive or something negative, it will end. You will not always be stuck in the same cycle, whether it be positive or negative, because that is life. The only there's two things guaranteed in life: death and taxes. The third is change, as I like to say. Everything will change. Now, since there's no inherent meaning to anything, we have to find that meaning. And because we have to find that meaning, it has to come through what we decide. Now, and you may not we're not always actively doing this. Okay. Like I might find meaning in reading Tolkien. Okay. But when I'm reading Tolkien, I'm not thinking about how this is giving me meaning and having a very deep philosophical conversation with myself. It's just that the themes and ideas in those books give me a framework of how I relate to my experience and my how art relates to me as a human being. Everybody, we all do this. We all find meaning in art. We all find meaning in pop culture and the things that we enjoy. We just do, and it's great. But those are going to be fleeting. The things I was into when I was, even when I was 30, in my 30s, have changed, and some things where I was into don't hold any purpose for me anymore. When I was a pagan high priestess, I still have positive memories and things that I really enjoyed about following that particular faith. But does it hold any meaning for me anymore? No. So my perspective has changed. It has shifted, and it's going to. That's why it's fleeting, because you will change. The more information, the more things that you're exposed to, eventually, as you go through life, it will eventually shift, change, and the things that gave you meaning before don't give you meaning anymore. Even people within religious groups, they start out, being indoctrinated, and, especially if they're indoctrinated at a young age and they grow up, what's important to them in the church in their 20s might change as they get into their 30s and 40s and 50s, because your life, your external life, the things around you change, your career changes, your friends change, your family changes. So that perspective that you're having is going to change, and that's okay, because and then that's where, if you have these little moments of joy, these little moments of feeling connected to the world. If you're a nihilist, I'll be like, well, you're not connected. Cool. I still feel connected, so I'm going to enjoy it. So that's kind of the perspective that you have to kind of take on when we're talking about finding meaning in meaningless. As I said before, absurdity is a source of freedom. Finding joy is in the struggle of life, even without a final purpose, focusing how you live rather than why. So instead of asking yourself, why do I exist? You do. That's it. You exist. Your parents had sex and you exist now. That's what it is. That's the reality of it, if I'm going to put it in very, very simply. But so since there is no real meaning to your existence, how do you live your life? Do you live your life, in that passive nihilism where nothing has any meaning and I'm just, an object in space, kind of being, I'm being put upon the world and, and I suffer and I have no control and, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Outside of mental illness, we have a lot of choice. So when we're looking, if we're looking at that, of our perspective that we are making active choices, then we have to ask ourselves, how do I want to live and what do I want my life to look like? And like, I am a selfish altruist. I am kind and wonderful to people because they'll be kind and wonderful to me back, and my life will be easier because I'm lazy and I want my life to be easy. So if you take on that sort of perspective of putting out what you get back, it's not something cosmic, it's just, cause and effect. And if we focus on how we do that and we're making active choices, then we are going to develop our own moral framework, and we're going to develop our ethics based on making active choices, not making passive ones. Religion allows you to be kind of passive because God's in control. And but even in religion, you have to be responsible for your own personal actions. So even if God's in control, you live in a secular society, there's going to be consequences. So you don't even get that. Now, if we're going to talk about ethics and compassion in a secular worldview, acknowledge the human need for connection and ethical frameworks, even without religion. Building an ethical life grounded in empathy, social justice, and personal growth. So, since I'm giving an existentialist point of view, is that I'm giving my life meaning. I am building my ethical framework. I'm a very empathetic person. I believe in social justice, personal growth, because in my perspective, we're all in this together. I'm a social species. Because we're apes and we like to hang around with our other hairless apes and we like to help each other because it makes things easier if we're cooperative, and it pushes society forward. It pushes our species forward. So if we're going to do like evolutionary psychology, everybody, that is why you're here, to make things easier on other people. If we're gonna, I'm just, pulling stuff out of my butt at this point. Anyway, but that being said, you still have a choice about how you want to live your life. And if you're a butthead, and you're making things actively difficult on other people, okay, you can do that, but also you are now cutting yourself out from things that might give your life meaning. Like, you might find meaningful relationships and change as a person, but if you're acting like a jerk, like as my husband says, no one cares why you're an asshole, you're just an asshole. Like, people are not going to want to engage with you. They're not going to be wanting to actively have you in their life. So you have made the choice, again, you're bound by choice, to cut that off and not have those meaningful relationships that could help you grow and change as a person. You can make that choice. It is your right to make it. But as I say, you were responsible for all the good and all the bad in the world, and nobody's keeping score. So if you want to make your life more difficult, you can do that, but it's not going to be fun. So in other words, however vast the darkness, we must supply our own light. It's a quote by Stanley Kubrick. It's one of my favorites, because you are the one that decides. That is it. Even if you're in a religion, you're still deciding, but it's up to you.
Did he say that? Did he say that quote before or after he created all the fake moon landing videos?
I don't know. Maybe that's a code for creating the moon landing.
I'm sure there must be a word code in there. We can figure every third letter or something. I faked it all, something like
exactly.
that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay. Let's let's talk about death. Because it's fun. Oh my God, I gotta get rid of this thing. It's driving me crazy. Okay, now, there's another little meme, and it said, it's a brain. This is me. It's my brain. Hey, go to sleep. Girl's like, yes, now shut up. You and everyone you love will die one day. And the girl's like wide awake. This happens. We have all felt this at one point or the other when the existential dread comes into our brains, usually when we're trying to go to sleep. And then we start thinking about the death and the void and is life meaningless? Because it just happens. It happens to us, even if you're, an existentialist like me. I still sit there and have like those momentary existential crises. It's completely normal. It's fine. So the existential challenge is, without inherent meaning, individuals must create your own purpose. As I said before, life is a project. Existentials see life as a canvas where choices and actions paint individual meaning, knowing it ends in death. I am highly aware that I'm going to die someday. And since I'm aware of that, I try to live authentically, because I have to live with intention and one's awareness of one's own mortality, which means that I could go to sleep tonight and not wake up. I could die in my sleep. I could get into a car accident tomorrow morning on my way to work. I could, trip, hit my head, have a brain concussion and die. That happens. People die for all different reasons every single day, and they weren't expecting it. But shit happens, man. So since I'm highly aware that my existence is finite, I try to live an authentic life as much as possible. I will often say to my friends, I love you, when I'm partying with them. I mean it, but also too, I remind myself that if I die or the person I care about dies, and that was our last interaction, I want it to be positive. I don't want them to live with a guilt of, I didn't say the right thing at the right time. We got into a stupid fight about this. I would rather leave in a positive note, and knowing the person knows either I passed away or they pass away, that I love them. That is me living authentically to my value system and the way that I care about other people. I don't do it all the time, but I try to actively tell people I love them on a regular basis, because I don't know if I'm going to have a tomorrow. So that's kind of my perspective as an existentialist, that this gives me life meaning by adding that perspective onto my existence of trying to be an authentic person, trying to live within that moral framework in relation to my mortality. And when you look at it from that perspective, because most of us, because the people that are recovering from religion, there can be that fear of death can be very prominent. It can be like, the boogeyman, because it is the great unknown. Like, I'm not afraid of death itself, but I'm afraid of how I'm going to die, because I don't want it to be awful. But once I'm dead, I'm dead. Like, it's going to be nothing. But for a lot of people, even if that it's silly, even like, that's why like the number one thing people call about on the hotline is fear of hell. You can know it intellectually, but emotionally, it's still there. The boogeyman's still like, yapping at you in the back of the head. And that's okay. It's okay, because that is an emotional trigger. It's understandable. I get it. Trauma's weird. But if you are actively living in authentically, you do realize that you are mortal, that you are going to die someday. Then you can choose, even with that fear of hell or, fear of your own death. That doesn't mean that you can ignore it. You can, but it's since we're reminded about death all the time, I don't know how. Because everything we do, from eating to sleeping to exercising to, whatever we're doing, is trying to keep ourselves alive. So you have to kind of have that framework of, how do I exist in the world And how do I make death meaningful to myself? How do I choose to bring death into my existence, that I am mortal? And how do I use that to become a better person? Because my time here is finite. Because we all know, like, whatever you accumulate, you can't take it with you. You know, nobody's sitting on golden toilets in heaven. Sorry, everybody. But that's something you kind of have to have that sort of perspective on. And that is why death is a good thing. It's not good in the sense that, like, people they love and care about us and going to miss us. Death is a good thing because it gives you a framework of how you're going to make ethical choices and live authentically in your own life. So that's my spiel about death. Can we do poll questions?
Yes. Okay,
Cool.
let me pull those up. Okay, here we go. So let's share the results. So we had the question, do you believe that individuals create their own meaning in life, or is meaning inherent in existence? And 55% of people said meaning is self-created. 2% said meaning is inherent. 30% said life is neutral, meaning is subjective, and 13% are unsure or undecided. So then next, we asked, how do you interpret the idea that life has no objective meaning, value, or purpose? And 54% of people agree. They say it inspires personal freedom. 8% disagree. They say meaning is intrinsic. 25% say that feels overwhelming or unsettling, and 13% have not thought much about it. And then we had the question.
Hold on, before we move
go
on,
ahead.
I want to respond to it feeling overwhelming and unsettling.
Yeah.
It's going to, because when you're faced with the ethical and your ethics, where you have to decide who you are and what kind of framework you're going to bring your life to, it can be terrifying. Also, too, when you realize that the universe doesn't give two shits about you, and really every decision you make, it's not going to have some great impacts. Even like we talk about Alexander the Great, but we also kind of realize that he was kind of an asshole because he did a lot of conquering, but everybody knows his name and he's remembered for a lot of awful stuff. Okay. So we also think about people throughout history like Carl Sagan, even though he's recent memory, that brought positive things to society. So it's all a matter of like your perspective and how you're viewing your existence. Now, the majority of us, other than the few little places that I'm on YouTube where millions and millions and millions of other people are, no one's probably going to remember me within like 3 generations. Like maybe I would like to think that, but probably not, because my kids don't want to have kids. So I'm the end. With that being said, okay.
Ellen, you will always be around on the YouTubes and the.
I will always be around.
Right. Unless we have like a civilization extinction event. No reason
I'm
for that to
hoping
go
that
away.
like if there's some alien race in the future that is really into a religion, that they just come across me saying like just a couple of these, it doesn't make any sense, don't believe it. and I'll argue logic. So but it's okay that it's overwhelming. And I'm not saying, because I didn't go through this, but a lot of people do, and you're not alone in that feeling. And it may take time to process, and that's okay. So anyway, I'll keep going.
Okay, yeah. So the next question that we asked was, what was the most challenging aspect of leaving religion, if applicable? And the top answer was actually fear of existential uncertainty. So that validates Helen's slide from earlier. That is a thing people were feeling. And then other answers were 26% chose family and social relationships, 24% chose loss of community and support, and 20% said no, it was liberating. So I guess that was like Rob and me. We're in the 20, and you, yeah. So we fell into that group, but actually more people fell into the fear of existential uncertainty. So they've come to the right talk, I think. Yes. And then and then finally we had the most important question, which is which classic monster movie you find most compelling.
That is the most important.
Yes. And 33% of people did select other. And I am going to imagine that they selected that because they wanted to pick alien, as Rob suggested. But they may
like
have picked some others too.
And
to be fair.
because they're muted, no one could hear them scream or talk.
Yeah, in space. I see what you did there. And then we also had Dracula was the next runner-up, which I love Dracula. And then followed by 23% chose Frankenstein's monster.
That's my
thank
favorite.
you for not saying Frankenstein. And then the creature from the Black Lagoon was at 13%, and 5% chose the werewolf. So tell us more about this question, Helen.
I did not pick Alien. The reason why is because I went with classic movie monsters, and Alien was in my lifetime, so I don't consider it classic.
Oh, fine. So how does this question about the movie monsters to you relate to
this topic?
These philosophical questions? Yeah,
because if you yes, they're Victorian age. Yes, Eric. Sorry. But also, let me point this out. The reason why is because monsters are a reflection of what is going on, some kind of fear that we have. Also, all these monsters want to kill you in some way. Like even like Frankenstein's a monster. Like he's kind of an innocent, but also he doesn't know his own strength because he wasn't taught a moral code. So that's the fault of the father. So where Dracula wants to drink your blood, and there's like a sexual metaphor in there. The creature of the battle, the Black Lagoon lives in the water, death, drowning, fun. So everything about having this sort of perspective on. Why do I keep doing that? I keep hitting my stupid button. Anywho, when you're looking at it from that sort of perspective of monsters and horror movies and things like that are always reflect an anxiety, and a lot of anxiety leads back to survival. So that's why I really love horror, because of that sort of existential kind of feeling of that existentialism dread. That like you get that visceral representation of that existential crisis of like we're all going to die, and having that cathartic release of that fear is very liberating to me in a very weird way, because horror is my favorite genre, other than sci-fi, which is, we can talk about existential stuff with sci-fi movie and art and stuff like that, but that's how it's related. Like if you look at things from the wider context of nihilism, absurdism, and existentialism, and you look at monsters, what about that? Why are they scary? It's because it's talking about some fundamental truth about our own mortality.
For some reason, since last Wednesday, I've been watching a lot of post-apocalyptic movies like Terminator 2 and Oblivion and things like that. Just thinking, oh, well, at least it's not that bad yet.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's a great point too, because in addition to the fears and anxieties about death, it's also kind of been suggested that these horror genres also may reflect like social fears and anxieties, just kind of more broadly speaking, which is what I love about the Alien franchise, because given that it came out in the 70s, it has been suggested that that was about fears regarding sort of the reversal of gender roles and the empowerment of women, which I personally am a fan of that societal change.
Listen, I'm like Disney owns Fox now, so Alien is a Disney princess, and don't at me. It's truth.
What? I love that.
That was a meme going on when they acquired it, and I just love that.
I'm going to be Googling that later.
Did Ellen and Ripley make you consider going into law enforcement, Cara?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't think so, because I don't think I saw that movie until I was an adult. Yeah, I don't remember when the first time I saw Alien was, but I think it was later in life. So no, I guess not. It must have been
I have
John
a
McClane in
xenomorph
Die Hard.
necklace. I have a xenomorph necklace I wear on a regular basis. And then everybody that's cool is like, I love that. I'm like, see, smart person. Anyway,
Yes,
moving on with
I
my
love it.
talk. All right. So,
Yes, moving on.
anxiety and freedom. We're going to talk about existential angst. Death often triggers existential angst, a deep anxiety tied to freedom, meaning, and mortality. So this we were talking about, like the terror, this overwhelming feeling of, oh, really? Like, oh my God, like the universe doesn't have any inherent meaning. What does that mean for me? You know, I get that. I do. But again, if we're talking about Camus, he says that because that existential angst is a thing, we now have the ability to create our own meaning. So goodness sake. So instead of focusing on, the wider spectrum of your existential angst, break it down. Okay. So, for example, instead of focusing on the wider picture of like who am I as a human being existence in the universe, that's a big question. And it doesn't provide there are no easy answers. And the answer that you can provide is the one that you give to it. Instead of focusing on those bigger questions, and start small. Start small on what gives your life actual meaning, and what gives you actual purpose. What personal passions, interests do you have, whether it be art, whether it be, politics, whatever, social justice, whether it be, arguing philosophy, whatever it is. Focus on the things that inspire passion and joy in yourself, rather than looking for some external sort of like, praying to the ether for to give you that meaning. You have the ability to choose your meaning. And if the thing that you're really into is like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that is your thing, focus on that. Focus on, all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle lore that you want. And because if that's giving you some kind of purpose, that is giving you some kind of joy, enjoy it while it lasts, because it will be fleeting. And allow that as like, it's kind of a silly example, but we all do this. We all have, like, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and like Tolkien's world, like I am, it's kind of embarrassing. But on the flip side of that, but it brings me joy. And if I can hang out with someone and talk about the philosophical musings of Tolkien, I will do that for hours, because that brings me joy. That brings some kind of meaning into my life. That brings me connection with other human beings that are into the same things that I'm into. And that helps me form a moral framework, and also brings me some self-reflection and gratitude to my life. And using these little tiny goals will lead to, kind of expanding your mind out, looking at things from a broader perspective. But you have to realize that it will change. It is not stagnant. It will morph, like you might be really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like this, for a couple of months, and then you're going to move on to something else. You might, and that's okay. Like I do this all the time. But look at it from more of a practical aspect than rather than and something that you're incorporating into your life rather than a goal, which basically, focus on the journey, not the destination, basically. And that's what life is. We're not the destination's death, everybody. Hate to break it to you. That's the reality. So in the meantime, why that this is going to happen to you, what do you do with that knowledge and power that you have? Because having knowledge of our own mortality gives us power. It gives us the power of choice. It gives us our ability to decide what kind of life do you want to lead. Because at the end of the day, when, like, if you get a religious person that says, well, who's going to hold you accountable? You hold yourself accountable. You are the one that is choosing the meaning that you bring into your life. So that should free you from that anxiety, because you are the one driving the ship. And you can choose how you want that to look. So, and that's the thing about like being bound to freedom, and you're being bound to choice. Choice is freedom, but you're bound to your choices, because all we do is choose. Because again, if you say, I don't have a choice, that means that you have decided that you are an object to the universe, and that you are allowing external forces to dictate who you are and what you're doing. Because even when you say you don't have a choice, you're making a choice. You're deciding, I don't have any other options. And sometimes there is none. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't none. And acknowledging that, being like, actually, there is no other way this will, play out. That is at least recognizing that you accept the responsibility of knowing that. And that's the difference of active and passive. If you actively acknowledge this particular thing I don't have a choice in, then you own that. And then on the other side, if you have other options, look at the broader options, the things that you can have control over, because you're doing it anyway. Okay, so more questions to ponder. What was the hardest thing to leave behind when you're stepping away from religious beliefs? What new insights or values have you gained? How can nihilism coexist with the search for happiness? What advice would you give someone who is newly leaving a religion? And are there any practices or habits that help you stay grounded in the face of the meaninglessness? So, little takeaways to bring forth, and then closing thoughts.
Those might be, I was just going to say, those might be fun things to ponder in the Hangout as well.
Yes, this is things you can ponder in the Hangout. I will pose these questions again if you so like me to.
Yes. Okay,
Hang
sorry.
around
Go
for the
ahead with your
Hangout, I'll be
closing
there.
thoughts.
All right, closing thoughts. Now, the philosophers that I mentioned these philosophies are a response to the human condition. Whether we lean towards existentialism, absurdism, or nihilism, each approach reflects a different way of coping with life's uncertainty and challenges. Life's lack inherent meaning doesn't distract from the potential for profound experiences, relationships, and self-growth. So, I'm just saying, like, if you become a nihilist, become an absurdist, become an existentialist, some on the spectrum of the three, I think, like I float a lot in the space. I don't relate to nihilism, but I get it from an existentialist perspective. It's weird, because these three are so closely combined that it can be kind of hard to parse through it. But this is kind of what happens when you become an atheist, that you have to look at this from that broader perspective of existing with you're a human being with consciousness, and you have to think about things. So, this helps give you, terms and things to kind of think about from that philosophical perspective. And also, how do you become, a good, kind person without religion? You choose to be. So in the end, if there is no great, glorious end to all of this, if nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do. And that's from Angel. And it's one of my favorite quotes, is the one that I live by. This is the quote I actually live by. Nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do. And thank you for listening to my talk. I am done now.
Thank you, Helen. I love that we got to have a deep dive into philosophy, and I think some people got some good reading recommendations going on in the chat too, to look further into a lot of these perspectives. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome.
I love it. And we have some questions. So, although I really liked the questions you posed, and I hope that we do get to those in the Hangout, but we do have some others too. So let's hit a couple of those. And you have actually kind of spoken to this one already. This question came in a little earlier before you talked about the death part. So you may have already covered this, but I'll go ahead and ask it in case you have more you want to add to it. Someone was asking, they said, a point of view I have on life is that all of us, including myself, will one day be dead and forgotten. One day in the future, no one will know we even existed. So, because of that, I don't do a lot of things because I think, yeah, I could do this puzzle or give to this charity or plant this vegetable, etc. But really, who cares? One day I will be forgotten. So, why does it matter? So, Helen, what are your opinions on this frame of thinking, and how do you answer these questions of when trying things? If you're thinking about who cares and why does it matter? I feel like you kind of just spoke to that, but do you want to say more to that?
Yeah, this kind of goes into that passive nihilism. Like, if nothing I do matters, then why should I do anything? Because and I get it in the grand scheme of things, like, like I said, like, in a couple generations, nobody's gonna know I fucking existed. That's fine. Honestly, I don't care. But the existence that I'm living in right now, it matters to those people. So if we're living, because if you're taking everything from a fleeting moment, that means everything is a fleeting moment. But in that time that you're here, you can actively choose what type of person you want to be. You are an active agent. So if you decide that you want to bring meaning into your life in some way, like, you don't do the puzzle because there's some intrinsic meaning to doing the puzzle. You do the puzzle because it helps you think, especially if you're doing it with another person. Like, that's bonding. That's a social camaraderie that you're doing. Like, I do puzzles with my kids, with my roommate and my kid that live with me. We do puzzles together. And like, oh, we created something together, and it's about bonding. But even if you're doing it by yourself, that's an exercise and of doing something that's creative, figuring things out on your own, getting your brain muscles working. So there's going to be like some kind of element to that. Giving to a charity, it's not going to matter once you're dead. But right now, like, if you give money to an animal shelter, that means some like little puppies and kitties are going to get fed this month. They'll be able to put an advertisement.
Volunteering your time for a worthwhile organization that might help
Exactly.
other people.
Like volunteering for Recovering for Religion. I've been doing this for 4 years. I'm doing this talk because I love this organization. That is when you're giving your time, money, energy. No, in a long time, probably, I hope that in 2 generations, we are not going to need RfR anymore. I like, not that I don't love y'all, but it would be really great if people didn't have to go through the trauma of leaving religion and we didn't have to be here. So, that's the goal. But in the meantime, we have to be here. And taking that time to just, give something of yourself, even though the long-term goal isn't to, like, if you look at it as winning, like you win life, you're missing the point.
I like it. All right. We've got a couple of other questions. Rob, do you want to go with one?
I can do that. So, do people on the non-religious side of this discussion need to do a better job of creating and explaining a framework to live your life for people? And how do we do this? Easy answer to that, I'm sure, Helen.
Oh, okay. Like, it's hard because, like, I went through explaining terms, because absurdism, nihilism, and existentialism, they kind of get all thrown in the same bag, but they have distinct meanings. But for non-religious people, when you're trying, okay, read that one more time, because I'm going, my brain's going one way because of my ADHD. So explain it.
I'm actually going to put it, I'll put it in the chat. Oh, it's got strikeouts,
Okay.
but you can still read it. So do
Okay,
people, got
for
it?
people. Okay. So if you're non-religious and you're trying to describe to someone what your moral framework is, you don't have to go into a long explanation about philosophy. Don't, because you're going to lose your audience. Like if they want to hear all the definitions of like what an existentialist is, what nihilism is, cool. Like there's a Google for that. But what you can say is, I choose. I choose my moral framework. And my choice is blah, 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 blah. Which is like my choice is to be a good human, to be kind, to be loving, to be welcoming, to be a safe person. That's my thing. I think that if you frame it in a way that you can appeal to someone's emotions and their empathy rather than going into big intellectual ideas, it will, one, save you a headache. Because like explaining to people like if they're 5, I think that's really important. And you have to be able to, especially if you're talking to someone that's religious, if you just ask them going, if they say like, well, you're going to become immoral if you become, non-religious, be like, why do you think that? Like, ask them why. And they'll say, well, you don't believe in God. And I'm like, but what if I will change? Because I don't want to hurt anybody. That will not change. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to lie to them. I don't want to steal from them. And I'm choosing. So if they were taught those values within religion, you can even attribute it to it. This is a humanist perspective, but if you're talking to a religious person, you're trying to get them to understand that I learned this within our moral framework, within our religion. I'm just rejecting the supernatural parts, but I'm still going to be a moral person. And I think that if you give it a framework that gets them to think about empathy and sympathy and how we treat one another, that's going to save you such a headache. Because you have to get people to because we'll just call it humanism. Because like I've talked to religious people, I'm like, do you care about other human beings? Do you want them to be okay? Do you want them to have equal rights? And they'll go, yes. I go, that's humanism. That's all it is. We recognize the human being in another person, and we want them to be safe and happy and live the life that they want to.
I love the exchange between the characters in Afterlife.
Yeah.
Right. The woman in his office, Ricky Gervais's office, says, "Well, I don't understand. If you don't believe in God, why don't you just go around murdering and killing people?" And Ricky Gervais, goes, "I do. I murder and kill as many people as I want." And she looks at, which is none.
None. Right. Because it's a choice.
Yeah.
It is a choice.
And
Because there are
then I
plenty of
have to.
religious people
And
that burger
when
and
people in my life ask me something like that, I go, "Well, keep believing if that's the only thing stopping you."
right. And that's
Yeah,
also
correct.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
that's
like
terrifying.
if your belief in God is keeping you from being a terrible, terrible human being, that you need to reconstruct you need help. You need more help than I can give you.
That's fair. Okay, well, I think we've got time for one more question. Rob, would you like to go with that question?
Yeah. This is a question by one of the representatives who's me. So, what? So
One of
I
the
typed this
representatives
in
who is
case we had.
me.
You're one of our representatives.
I,
You're
I,
recovering from religion.
yes, I typed this in case we had time, and we have time, so I'm going to ask it because there's no other questions that we've collected. Was it harder to leave Wicca than Catholicism, or the other way around? Considering things like the social circles you had to leave behind in both cases, what do you think?
It was harder for me to leave. Well, leaving the Catholic religion wasn't really that difficult because I am a sexual abuse survivor. Not from the church, just through other circumstances. And when the sex abuse scandal happened, I was like, oh fuck no. And I walked away. And I had already been questioning, through my teenage years and things like that. So that was it, and I was already a mother at that point. So it was a very easy, like, nope, done, you know, over this. Paganism, yes and no. like when I look back on it, I had a lot of experiences, like I said, the death of the thousand cuts, that kind of moved me away from it, but the process was longer because it wasn't so much letting go of the belief, it was reframing my brain so I didn't hold a belief anymore. And that's why I didn't go through like the trauma response and like wringing my hands of like leaving a religion, because it was a very slow process that happened to me over time. Um, and I wasn't indoctrinated into paganism. Like I just believed it because I grew up in the 90s and I learned magical thinking and being a witch was cool. So like I like the aesthetic. All about us. I love a show, people. Like you give me a good aesthetic and some ritual, I'm there. So, but that being said, I can still do those things without, I can make a choice to have ritual and not put any religion into it. That's a choice. And I think that, but I didn't lose my social circle. I'm still friends with a majority of all my friends that were in the pagan religion. Some of them are still pagan, but they're like, Helen's an atheist. Fine, whatever. She's so cool. Like it doesn't have the social stigma that other religions do. Like if you leave, you're going to lose your support networks. Like paganism doesn't do that. So it's not at some, aspects of paganism might. We were kind of, and because we were eclectic and we had kind of the attitude that everyone was a teacher and everyone was a student, nobody was in, like I was a facilitator and a high priestess, but I was like, I just led stuff and taught classes. Like I was not like, I am a benevolent leader, worship me. Like, no, I don't like that responsibility. Like,
What type of classes? What type of classes did you teach?
I taught how to read runes. I taught how to do
What?
palmistry.
To read, to do what? To read what?
To do divination with like Garthic Viking runes. I forget the word. I need a word.
Oh, you were like Professor Trelawney.
I was Professor
Harry Potter.
Trelawney. I taught you how to read the energy off of crystals.
Oh no.
Yeah, I was that person. I taught tarot.
No.
I taught palmistry. I taught you how to read an aura. I was that person. I think,
Cara, we need an RfRx episode where Helen does this just so we see what it's like.
Yeah,
oh my God,
we need to have like a secular review of your classes.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God, like I called into Truth Wanted on Friday, and because we were talking about conspiracy theories, and Cara, when Dr. Ben did the with the conspiracy theory, like we were doing the street epistemology, I had to go back to that part of my brain where I believe bullshit. And I was like,
yes,
it's weird. So I mean, like I could do a talk about all the bullshit.
that might be fun to do a debunking of some of those things.
Yeah, we can do. Oh my God, I can do so much
has
debunking.
Shifted. Yeah. Ooh, that could be fun. Okay.
A lot of people that remember I was talking about, like, when people leave religion, they go to some other belief structure because they're worried about that existential angst of the universe not having any inherent meaning. They'll go to like new age woo-woo stuff, and they'll go to like homeopathy. Thank you. Homeopathy. They'll go to start going to psychics. They'll start, messing around with crystals. They'll start doing Reiki. They'll start doing like energy healings. They'll start going to like the supplement route, all kind because they want to, because if you don't deconstruct the other part of your brain, the magical thinking part, which I did a talk about before, please watch that. You're going to fall into other patterns of I don't like religion. Like religion is bad, but there must be like, something to the universe. There has to be something in control. And that's where, again, we're just shifting where we're putting our choices.
Yep. Love it. And on that note, let's wrap up and look forward to Helen's subsequent talk next year on debunking palm reading and tea leaves.
Oh my God, I could do a whole series.
So we here's my idea. We don't put debunking anywhere in the title. We just teaching. The title is teaching these things, and we have people who from the other side who might come to think they're going to learn about this stuff and get the skeptical viewpoint. Mm.
Hey.
Ooh,
Glenda's
reverse
going to have
psychology.
a
I
lot of
like
trolls to
it.
knock out though if we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good times. I love it. Well, she is up to the task. I have no doubt.
Oh, I
All
will
right.
do it. I
Yes.
have no
Okay.
problem.
Plans for next year. I am excited for this. Don't forget to keep coming back next year. We've got more evil plans. Just kidding. They're not evil. We make good choices here. And so, on that note, thank you, Helen, for sharing this with us. This was really fascinating. And I love that we got to spend some time thinking philosophically about our choices. So, thank you for that. Thank you, Rob, for co hosting, Glenda, Nikki, Gail, Daryl, everyone else in the background who helps us make these things happen every week and gets them onto the interwebs. And thank you, everyone, for coming and participating. You are the reason that we still have these every week. So thanks for joining us. Stick around for the hangout and come back again next week. We have some of our guests coming up in the next couple of weeks include Jason Rashiotes, Erica Matthews, and Forrest Valkai is going to be coming back again. So definitely join us for that. And don't forget to follow us on the social medias. It helps other people find us and it helps you keep up with all of the goings on at RFR. We're on Facebook. We have both our Facebook main page and our Facebook support group page. We are on Instagram and TikTok, and of course on YouTube, where you can find most of the previous RfRx recordings. So check us out there. And Rob, what else can people do to get involved?
Well, absolutely. One of the things they can do is what we all do here is volunteer. People who have volunteered for Recovering from Religion have learned that healing can come from helping other people go through what they went through. Sometimes even helping people go through things that they didn't go through if you feel for them. RFR volunteers find meaning and purpose by doing this. All of the services are supported by volunteers, and we're always in need of more people to do these things. And besides working on the upfront sort of jobs like the helpline, which get talked about a lot on the ACA shows, call the helpline, chat into the helpline. But there's a lot of other things we do here that are more behind the scenes. We have volunteers who find and vet and then post good resources in the resource channel that we talked about before. We need clients to host the support groups, to moderate the channels in the online community. We need people to update our IT. That's always going on. Our apps are being upgraded so that it's more useful for the clients as well as for the agents. And also what we're doing right here, right? You can volunteer and eventually help with this show, whether it's to be on the air, so to speak, or to help get it edited to be put on audio podcast or on our YouTube channel. So to apply to volunteer, fill out the form on our main page at the very top, recoveringfromreligion.org, and it's volunteers right at the top. We have a fairly new thing. A couple months ago, we made a 3-minute video that goes through all of the stuff we do. It's on our main page. It's called RFR What We Do. People can also just search for that on YouTube, RFR What We Do. And it's 3 minutes that goes through all of the services you've heard about us talk about tonight. And if you know anyone else in your life that you think it might be useful, it might be even better to send them than sending just our homepage, because it puts it all in one place for 3 minutes, gets narrated by a bunch of people who volunteer here, and it's introduced by our president, Dr. Darrell Ray.
And speaking of Dr. Darrell Ray, I believe he has a few words to share with us in closing for our not benediction.
Bless you, my child. As the high priest of the
Namaste.
church. Well, anyway, Helen, thank you so much. This was very interesting. And you took me back many decades to when I was first exposed to existentialism by reading Albert Camus' book, The Plague, and then later Myth of Sisyphus. I think I read everything Albert Camus wrote in a period of like 1 or 2 years. I read everything, and I reread a lot since then. So you revived my memories of all that. But I also discovered Kurt Vonnegut, and wow, that again, I read almost everything, and I'm rereading some of what I'm reading. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. I just finished rereading Cats. Yeah, Mozart. I can't remember. Anyway, I've read 3 of them. Oh, Myth of Sisyphus, I reread about a month ago. Anyway, and Cat's Cradle. That's my favorite of Vonnegut's. But the reason I mention that is because I went through 2 years of seminary, teaching, reading, and studying theology, and I had one course at Vanderbilt Divinity School that I chose to take. It was an elective called Theology and Literature. And I'm telling you, that one course forced me to read 19 different novels. That's where I got exposed to Vonnegut. That's where I got exposed to Camus and 19 different authors. And there was more theology, there was more good philosophy in that one course than I had in the entire rest of the 2 years I was studying theology. Theology is nothing but mental masturbation as far as I'm concerned. Whereas what you were talking about tonight and what I learned in that course was you could really learn a lot of philosophy and really ask a lot of good questions by reading some really good nonfiction books like The Myth of Sisyphus or The Plague. I think The Plague was the first one I got exposed to, and wow, that one really challenges I was still a good Christian back then. It really challenges a good Christian's worldview, and probably set me on the road to becoming an atheist. Anyway, before I sign off here, Kara, is I really like the notion that death helps develop a moral framework. It really forces us to create our moral framework within the confines, just like having a deadline, I guess you could say. It's all going to end, so how are you going to live it while you're still in this? And boy, I agree with you. I think death is a good thing. These people that want to live forever, people that want to, I don't know, there's a whole group of people that want to live forever. That's fine. I'm 74 years old. If I live another 20 or 30 years, I'll be happy, but I see no sense in going forever and ever, because it really stops that framework that you're talking about, or takes the framework piece out of it, which I think is important. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Great work, Helen.
Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate it.